The station hung silently in orbit above a dying star, its hull battered by years of cosmic radiation, and the hum of its engines filled the corridors with a steady vibration that felt almost alive. I had come to survey the systems, check anomalies, and report back to Earth, expecting nothing more than the monotony of blinking lights and recycled air. That expectation ended the instant she appeared. I first noticed her standing near the observation deck, her silhouette framed against the swirling plasma storms below. At first glance, she could have been human, tall, elegant, with a fluid grace that seemed almost choreographed. But the long, delicate ears that rose from her head and angled like sensitive antennae immediately set her apart. They twitched and shifted in subtle rhythms, attuned to sounds, movements, or perhaps even the thoughts of those around her. "You have no idea who I am," she said, her voice melodic, sharp, and oddly playful. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a challenge, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Right," I stammered, trying to make sense of her presence. "Not at all, no clue, totally lost here." I tried to sound casual, but the truth was that my heart had already begun to race. Every instinct screamed that this encounter was far beyond ordinary. Her ears twitched, and a subtle smile curved her lips. "You believe yourself observant, yet your assumptions are laughably narrow." I swallowed hard, realizing she wasn't just testing me, she was analyzing me. Every gesture, every word, every micro-expression was cataloged and judged. "Laughably narrow, huh? I'll try harder then. Maybe I need a cheat sheet to understand alien humor and mystery." Her laughter was soft but resonant, a sound that seemed to ripple through the observation deck. "Humor, an interesting mechanism for humans. You attempt to mask unease, yet it is transparent, fascinating." I raised an eyebrow, trying to recover some dignity. "Transparent, huh? Glad my anxiety is entertaining at least, beats being boring." She tilted her head slightly, and the subtle shift in her long ears conveyed more than words could. "Boring is not a threat. Understanding the threat is. Observe carefully." I followed her gaze to the holographic interface projecting nearby, where streams of erratic energy readings flashed in chaotic patterns. "Right, the readings. Unstable energy spikes near the star's corona. Yeah, I noticed. No big deal, right?" Her eyes glimmered, the color shifting faintly with her emotions, and she moved with a precision that belied the casual confidence in her voice. "No big deal," she echoed. "You assume control over phenomena you cannot comprehend. That is amusing." I laughed nervously. "Amusing, yes, but also terrifying. I assume that's the point." "You assume incorrectly," she said, stepping closer, ears twitching forward in a predatory rhythm that was both alarming and compelling. "You do not comprehend. You cannot even begin to fathom." And yet, despite her warning, despite the clear superiority in intellect and ability, I felt a strange pull, a curiosity that was equal parts fear and fascination. "Right, I cannot fathom. I can, however, try to keep the station from exploding while learning, whatever it is I need to learn about you." Her gaze sharpened, and I felt the weight of her observation settle on me like gravity. "You are persistent. This is unusual." "I have to be persistent," I said quickly, almost reflexively. "Otherwise I just wander around making things worse, which, frankly, is my specialty." Her lips quirked, just enough to suggest amusement. "Specialty noted. Yet you also demonstrate potential, curiosity, adaptability. You are engaging." I chuckled, nervously rubbing the back of my neck. "Engaging, that's reassuring, I think, or terrifying. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." Her ears twitched again, a subtle rhythm that I now recognized as a signal of her consideration. Terrifying and reassuring often coexist. This is the human condition. I stared at her, realizing that this was not a casual encounter. The way she moved, the precise, almost mechanical grace that blended seamlessly with subtle human-like expressions, the flicker of energy in her eyes, everything suggested a being who was far more than appearances allowed. I was both overwhelmed and intrigued, caught between the desire to flee and the irresistible pull of her presence. "You observe me," she said suddenly, voice calm but firm. "You focus on details beyond necessity. You assess patterns, anticipate reactions. You are curious." I laughed softly, a mix of self-deprecation and awe. Curious, yes. Terrified, yes. Over my head, absolutely. Happy to keep contributing, though. Her smile widened slightly, and I noticed the subtle shift of her posture, the barely perceptible sway of her long ears as if she were savoring the unfolding interaction. "You may remain. Observation is permitted, for now. But understand, there is more beneath the surface than you can imagine." I swallowed hard, aware that those words carried weight beyond their literal meaning. Beneath the surface, sounds like my kind of mystery. Also sounds like a bad idea to blink too much. She chuckled softly, a sound that resonated with intelligence and amusement. "Blink if you must, but comprehension requires attention, and attention you give willingly." I exhaled, feeling a strange thrill, the mix of danger, mystery, and humor creating a tension that was exhilarating rather than frightening. Attention granted, for now. But fair warning, I tend to make questionable decisions under pressure. Her eyes glimmered, her ears twitching with subtle approval. "Then perhaps your mistakes will teach me something unexpected." And in that moment, with the station humming softly around us, the swirling storms below, and her gaze fixed on me with a mix of curiosity and challenge, I realized that nothing in my training or experience had prepared me for this. This alien woman, who laughed and declared that I had no idea who she was, had changed everything. And I had no idea where it would lead, but I knew it would be impossible to ignore. The next cycle on the station began with the usual hum of energy conduits, but the rhythm felt different, as if the universe itself had shifted slightly in response to her presence. I had tried to convince myself that yesterday's encounter was an anomaly, a peculiar, almost theatrical display from an alien with a flair for the dramatic. But the moment I entered the central deck, I realized it was only the beginning. Celira stood at the edge of the observation platform, her silhouette sharp against the starfield outside, ears angled forward with an intensity that made even the blinking consoles seem insignificant. Her long ears moved in subtle, precise motions, like a conductor coaxing an orchestra from chaos, each twitch conveying information I could only half interpret. When she spoke, it was with the calm authority of someone used to commanding worlds. "You are attempting to catalog anomalies," she observed, her voice low and melodic, threading through the deck like a current. "Yet your classifications are simplistic, insufficient." I swallowed and tried to muster some confidence, leaning on the console in a casual manner I hoped didn't betray my apprehension. "Simplistic, Well, I'm human. That's kind of our thing. We oversimplify first, panic second, and sometimes get it right by accident." Her eyes glimmered faintly, a shimmer that seemed to bend the light around her. "Accidents are acceptable if they produce results. Yet understanding is preferable." I grinned despite the pressure, realizing that humor was my only weapon against the sheer gravity of her presence. Preferable, yes, but results are more exciting. Results mean things actually work, instead of just looking pretty on a display. Celira's lips twitched in what I now recognized as amusement. "You are persistent. Humor appears to serve as a deflection mechanism." Deflection, yes. A vital survival strategy when dealing with enigmatic, pointy-eared warriors, I replied, attempting a bow that earned a slight twitch from her ears. She stepped closer, and the energy field around her seemed to react, pulsing faintly as if acknowledging her presence. "Your human persistence is engaging. It may serve as a useful variable in the experiment." "Experiment, sure. Sounds legit," I muttered under my breath, though I'm not entirely sure which one of us is the subject and which is the observer. Her gaze sharpened, almost predatory in precision, and yet there was a trace of humor hiding beneath the surface. "Perhaps both," she said softly, Perhaps this interaction is mutually instructive. Before I could respond, alarms flickered across the console, and a cascade of erratic energy readings filled the holographic display. A nearby research vessel had entered an unstable sector of the plasma storms, and the station's sensors were overwhelmed by fluctuating gravimetric fields. Celira moved with effortless grace, her ears flicking forward, hands adjusting multiple controls with precision that made my own movements feel clumsy. "You will assist," she said, almost casually. "Analyze the patterns. Suggest intervention points. I will coordinate the stabilizers." I nodded, adrenaline sharpening my focus. "Right, analyze, suggest, hope we don't implode." Her eyes glimmered, ears twitching in what I now recognized as mild amusement. "Your optimism is audacious. Proceed." For the next hour, we moved in synchrony, her movements fluid, deliberate, and precise. Mine haphazard but increasingly effective as I learned to read the subtle cues of her long ears and shifting posture. I began to anticipate her adjustments, noticing the way her focus darted from one data stream to another, how she used humor and subtle misdirection to test my intuition. At first it had been overwhelming, but gradually I fell into a rhythm, understanding more than the data itself, understanding her mind. "You adapt quickly," she noted, tilting her head. "Your responses are no longer merely reactive. There is comprehension. This is unusual." "Unusual, yes," I said, laughter threading through my exhaustion. "Also terrifying, but somehow exhilarating, like juggling plasma storms with someone who's probably 1,000 times smarter than me." Her ears flicked forward sharply, almost in approval. "Exhilaration is a useful motivator, yet do not let amusement distract from accuracy." "I'll try," I said, grinning, "though it's hard to focus when you're half conspiring to make me look foolish and half teaching me how to survive galactic chaos." She let out a low, almost imperceptible laugh. "Conspiring not my intent. Guidance, yes. Survival imperative." By the time the anomaly stabilized, the plasma storms calmed, and the research vessel adjusted safely to its corrected orbit, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion, triumph, and something more subtle, connection. I had survived not merely because of my own skill, but because I had learned to observe, anticipate, and understand her. And in the process, I had discovered a new depth to my own abilities. "You performed well," she said, her voice carrying a rare softness. "Your decisions were logical within the parameters of human limitation, yet there is creativity in your solutions. This is valuable." "Valuable. I like the sound of that," I said, laughing softly, "even if it comes with the faint undertone of being a lab experiment." Her eyes glimmered, a shift in color that I now recognized as approval. "Perhaps, yet you are engaging. There is amusement, yes, but also potential for insight." I exhaled, realizing the truth of her words. My confidence had grown, my fear tempered by experience, and I had begun to navigate a space that felt both alien and exhilarating. More importantly, I had begun to see her, not merely as an enigma or a superior being, but as a companion in this strange, hazardous universe, someone whose presence demanded attention, trust, and curiosity in equal measure. "So what's next?" I asked, leaning slightly closer, daring a spark of humor. "Another round of near-death experiences, or do we get coffee first?" Her lips curved in a subtle, almost teasing smile, ears flicking forward. "Perhaps both. There is more to observe and much you will learn, including yourself." And as the station hummed around us, the stars outside spinning in endless cosmic dance, I realized that our journey had only just begun, and that each challenge, each interaction, was shaping a bond that neither of us fully understood, yet both could feel. The station trembled as a sudden surge of energy cascaded through its conduits, alarms blaring in shrill tones that reverberated against the steel hull. I stumbled over the polished floor panels, heart hammering, and Celira was already moving beside me, Her long ears angled sharply as she scanned the interface panels with a precision that made my own hurried gestures feel clumsy. The readings were unprecedented. An external energy pulse from the nearby pulsar had triggered resonance in the station's core, and if it wasn't stabilized immediately, the entire outpost could be destabilized, sending debris and research vessels hurtling into the void. "Human," she said without turning, voice calm but authoritative, "your role is observation, pattern recognition, and decision input. You are no longer merely reactive. Act." I swallowed, trying to steady my racing thoughts. Right. Observation, recognition, decision. Got it. Simple enough for someone not trying to survive cosmic annihilation. Her ears twitched forward in amusement. Your humor remains persistent. It is functional. I had come far since the first day I met her, when her laughter and enigmatic statements left me baffled and anxious. Now, there was rhythm to our movements, an unspoken communication that had developed through hours of shared peril, absurd moments, and the gradual unraveling of the mysteries surrounding her. I noticed small cues, the tilt of her head, the shift in her stance, the subtle pulse in her eyes, that guided me as surely as any protocol or training manual. "Stabilizers are oscillating beyond threshold," she said, gesturing to the holographic readouts. "Redirect auxiliary conduits. Synchronize with my calculations. Be precise. We cannot fail." "Precision," I muttered, almost laughing to myself. "The one thing I've been practicing since being thrown into interstellar chaos with the galaxy's most intimidating pointy-eared warrior." She flicked a glance at me, ears flicking with an almost imperceptible twitch. "Do not underestimate yourself. You have changed. You have grown beyond initial parameters." I grinned despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Changed, huh? That's a compliment I'll accept, even if it comes with the threat of imminent doom." We worked in tandem, manipulating conduits and adjusting resonance fields, the station's core responding to our combined efforts. Her abilities were extraordinary. She manipulated energy patterns with ease, reading the feedback in real time. But I contributed something equally vital: adaptability, intuition, and the courage to act despite uncertainty. I realized for the first time that she didn't just need me to follow orders. She needed me to think, improvise, and offer insight that even her advanced calculations couldn't predict. "Energy pulse decreasing," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "We're actually doing this." Celira allowed herself a faint smile, ears flicking forward in subtle approval. "Indeed. Your calculations, combined with improvisation, have stabilized the resonance. Efficiency was unexpected, yet effective." I laughed softly, the tension easing. "Unexpected effectiveness sounds like my specialty." Her gaze softened, the long ears swaying gently. "Specialty acknowledged, yet your growth extends beyond function. You have learned patience, observation, and trust. You comprehend subtlety in ways uncommon to your species." I exhaled, realizing the depth of her words. This journey had transformed me. I was no longer just a human reacting to external stimuli. I had learned to read nuance, anticipate the unknown, and cooperate with a being whose capabilities and motives I had only partially understood. The terror and bewilderment of our first encounter had been replaced with confidence, understanding, and a sense of shared purpose. "And you," I said quietly, almost to myself, "you've changed me more than I could have imagined." I started out clueless, scared, and overwhelmed, and now, I trailed off, letting the station's hum fill the silence between us. Her ears twitched in acknowledgement. "And now you are competent, insightful, and adaptable. You have survived not merely through skill but through comprehension and cooperation. You understand more than systems. You understand context, intention, and presence." I felt warmth spread through me, a mixture of pride and something softer, deeper. "And I care," I admitted, voice low, "about this, about you, about the fact that we actually work as a team." Her gaze softened, a rare and almost imperceptible expression that conveyed approval and something more intimate. Acknowledgement received. Reciprocity is noted. Your presence is significant. For a long moment, we simply stood together, the hum of the station surrounding us, the stars outside a swirling tapestry of color and motion. I realized that the crises, the humor, the tension, and the peril were not merely obstacles. They had been catalysts, shaping a connection that neither of us had fully understood at first but that now felt inevitable. So, what now? I asked, the corners of my lips twitching in a mischievous grin. Another near-death experience, or do we get coffee first? Celira's ears flicked forward in the subtle rhythm of amusement I had learned to recognize. Perhaps both. There are more anomalies to observe, yet your insight will guide decisions. Together, the galaxy continues and so do we. I exhaled, a sense of closure washing over me. I had arrived as a human uncertain of everything, and now I stood beside an alien warrior, transformed, confident and aware of both my limits and my potential. The journey had tested me, taught me and changed me, and in the process forged a bond of trust, understanding and subtle humor that transcended species. The station glimmered around us, lights reflecting off the control panels, and I felt the weight of weeks of adventure lift. Whatever lay ahead, unknown threats, cosmic anomalies or distant stars calling for exploration, we would face it together, having discovered that courage, laughter, and empathy could bridge even the vast distances between worlds. And as I looked at her, long ears twitching with deliberate curiosity, I understood that some mysteries were not meant to be fully solved, only experienced, and that sometimes the most profound